Alan Barkstrom,
Here.
Doug Erickson,
Here.
Brian Ernst,
Here.
Jeff Paulstrand,
Here.
Larry Palachuk. Everyone is present.
Awesome. Public comment and communications. Doesn't appear there's anybody here for public comment. Do any committee members have any communication? Alan?
Good morning, Mr.
Morning.
Chairman. Seeing as we're entering into the budget season, I thought I'd do a little comparison of how we measure up, and I used the Forward Analytics, the Green Book, 2024. And the comparisons were in spending per capita. So the state average in spending per capita is $1,107. Price County is $1,648. So we spend a little bit more. But I also looked at our neighbors, and I took Price County, Sawyer County, Rusk, Lincoln, Taylor, and Ashland, and I averaged what they were spending per capita, and we're right there within a few dollars. Average spending was $1,644, and we're spending $1,648. Then I took two big categories: highway, state spending $118 per capita, Price County $333. So, and our peer group, the average there was $261. So we're spending, let's see, as far as about 182% more in highway than the state average, and 30% higher than our peer group. Health and Human Services, their state average $373, Price County $413. Our peer group was within a few dollars, so we're spending just about the same amount. County levy, state average $423, Price County $845 as far as the levy is concerned. And let's see, our peer group, we were about 10% higher. So that's just good information.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and-
and then at the Wisconsin Counties Association, the author of that book was highlighted, and he said that Wisconsin is on the higher end of taxation when compared to other states. Like, we're up there.
Property taxes, we are high in the nation. Other taxes were low. So like our sales tax is nationally low. So we put it on the property owners, not on the purchasers.
Yeah, and then some states, like, they don't have any
Or
income tax.
Yeah.
But it was, Wisconsin does. We have
Yeah.
all the taxes.
Yeah. And not that it's in communication, but it would be a good topic. We can talk about that book in the future. It would be a good agenda
So-
item, but
I guess my thought was, as we consider what the budget is going to be, we should just see where we're at, and we're on the high end.
When it says per capita, like, does that include non-residents? Is it just individual tax
But live here,
people that claim residence in the county?
yeah.
the thing with like highway, it's
I
per
understand.
lane mile. Like we're really low per lane mile because we have the fourth highest lane miles in the state, or it's really high. So we're gonna have a high per capita for highway. Plus, we've dedicated a lot to construction, especially in the last couple of years. But that's where I always argue with Dale Knapp, and I have conversations about this book. Is it's really hard when you take a county like Dane County and compare it to Milwaukee or Price County and say we have 14,000 people, but we still have to provide the same services that they do. Take a Chippewa, Eau Claire, whatever. We don't have the same amount of people to do the same, but we still have to do the same services. So if we need a children and youth doctor or a service provider, we might only have 2 clients, but it still costs you $500,000 to have that service in your community. Where in Chippewa County, they have 100 people that need that service. It still only costs them $500,000. So going to the lane miles, we have more lane miles, less people. It's going to be higher per capita. The biggest one too is mill rate. We're always in the bottom quarter of that. But if you take your same property and move it to Chippewa County, who has a third of the mill rate, so the $200,000 assessment here would be $600,000 there. which would take our $6 mill rate to a $2 mill rate. We still pay the same check. I pay $3,000 here for a $200,000 house. I pay $3,000 there for a $600,000 house. So again, I always have that argument with WCA. It's like you're putting out a comparison that's not, it's accurate to what they're telling you they're comparing, but not accurate to
Well,
what the variables.
we
may
compare
be.
well with our peer group.
Correct.
our
That's what,
neighborhood,
yeah, and that's what
our
you should be
neighborhood,
looking
but not
at.
the
Yep.
state. And the other thing I noticed is that law enforcement was not, there was no comparison in that book.
They're special.
And that's a high expenditure.
Mr. Hallstrand.
I agree. We should have this green book as a topic in the future for the full board. I'll task Mr. Trimner with, there is a population survey that came out from the state with a whole bunch of really interesting slides. This problem of no people here gets really, really bad down the road. And so it's something that we are going to have to address. And it's not just us, but we were singled out on the slides that I seen that we really dropped because of the age of the people who live here now. And we're going to increase in age, but we aren't drawing the younger kids in here as replacement income, or replacement residents. So that's out there. And I was told that you received the
Yeah,
slide.
I've seen that twice. I think WCA and the Northwest Regional Planning. maybe
Northwest
done it?
Regional Planning is where I seen it, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Any other communications? Okay, we'll move on. Item number 2, meeting minutes from November 7th, 2024. Should be in your packet and be looking for a motion to approve. Motion by Polachek, second by Hallstrand. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Any nays? Motion approved. Minutes approved. Treasury report, item number 3, monthly reports.
So the first month of getting into the role, getting through tax season and settlements and everything, just basically was going to get an update of a tax status report that I pulled last night, which shows over 24 million being paid, with approximately 33.7 million in real estate that's owed and 24.2 million paid so far. So I think those are good. We've collected a lot of delinquent utilities and special charges as well. So overall, we've received 24.9 million in payments in so far. There are 19 remaining parcels for 2021 in REM process. And I know we have the ordinance to review as well for the tax deed properties.
Going forward, could you put those sheets in our packet?
Sure.
Just, the list of those in REM, and
Sure.
you could look at previous packets. We usually get a little printout of what you have. Anything else?
I do not for today.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Hearing none, we'll move on. County Administrator, 2025 financial reports.
All right. They should be in your packet. I will warn you that what's in your packet is not the final end of year. So for example, oops, I stopped sharing. When we look at the numbers that where we're at for 2024, we did a $350,000 revenue this morning that goes back to that year. So it looks like we're short, or it looks like we've under collected, overspent. There's a long way to go in getting the final numbers. So we'll talk about what's in your packet, but there's more revenues to come. So the first page is the general fund. Like I said, on the revenue side, we've collected $10.3 million. We have another $350,000 coming in. So we'll be at about 105%. So another 1% going there. Expenditures, we've spent 11,300,000. For as far as expenses, I'm not aware of any major ones. There's always the little like so what we do is it's called period 13. So if we provide, or there's a service to be provided in December, but we don't get the bill till January, the way our accounting practices work is you bill that, or you pay that back in December for that year's budget, because that was that year's budget cost. Some of the reasons we went over, we'll bring forward at a future meeting. We always go through the lines if there's a major overage. The areas you'll see are, we did the wage increase last year, and then budgeted for it this year. We had health insurance that we went over in some areas, which we were well aware of. We had some large projects that we haven't done the journal entries for yet. So if you just look at it from a 100,000-foot view, it looks like, oh my gosh, you're overspent by $1 million in general, when really we're much closer than that. Like I said, 350,000 came in this morning. We got some more coming from other areas. The areas where we know we're falling short last year would be forestry, the stumpage, which we'll see a little farther down, but that comes from the general fund based on the previous year's average. So that's where you offset that. Sheriff's Department, jail, end of year was a little rough over there. We had the body on 13, which caused a lot of overtime and costs. We had a couple other large events. So that one's over, but we'll again talk about that in the future. Health and Human Services, this one's always about 2 months behind, so take this with a grain of salt, but in general, we believe we're forecasting that they'll have had a good year.
So we've got revenues coming in yet?
Yep. So revenues and expenses come until April, so it takes a while.
Right, but you see enough revenues to help offset this overage
Yeah.
significantly?
Yeah.
And we're not going to see a bunch of expenses too?
No, Health and Human Services, the biggest expenses still to come are the high cost placements, AODA, and children and youth. Revenues are behind there because you have to get the bill, you got to get reimbursed from the state.
Yeah.
So
I think at the last meeting you mentioned on that high placement for youth, like some really high number as far as cost per day.
yep, we have a couple
It was
individuals.
like $20,000 a month, and there's 2 potential.
We have one that did get placed. They talked about it yesterday. You remember? It was like 19 or 20 some thousand
Yeah.
for 35 days.
There's 2, one that was there who was placed and one who is potential or will be placed there. It's like 35 grand for the
Per month?
25-day assessment. Yeah,
I mean, that's more than a nursing home.
Kayla said when she started, the same placement was 8,000. It's just the cost has gone up.
Where is the final destination for those kids?
One was sent to a treatment group home and is doing much, much better. And the other, I believe, is still in the assessment.
And are you asking, is it going to be 35,000 forever or till they're 18?
No, it's one
Right. It's
one
one
assessment.
Yeah, it's 25 days for $35,000, and then they go into a placement potential, which
Mhm.
could range from $3,000 a month to $10,000 a month, depending on security level, what type of treatments are needed. But if it gets bad, then that's where you see the $20,000 a month, because it's a non-state placement, and you end up it can get expensive real quick.
And we don't have any control over having to put these people there, correct? I mean, it's mandated.
Right. Our control is to do the best we can with the families as early as we can and get them the help that's local as much as possible. But at some point they do hit a wall of service that you have to place them.
Are some of these services like out of state, like Tennessee?
Yep. So not the assessment one, but if say this individual came back and was assessed at, highest max level, there may be no beds or no place in the state of Wisconsin, I'll take it. And then you have to look at like Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee. Those are the ones I always hear, is that area. And those cost a lot.
I guess what initiated this little conversation was, I just want to make sure, you said we got revenues coming in, so don't be worried about the overage, but as long as the expenditures are not real high.
Yeah, no, like I said, Carrie and I talk about this. It always looks worse when you don't deal with it every day and you know what's coming and going. So we looked at, we have a $25 million in expenses. And if at the end of the year, we're only off by $500,000 one way or the other,
Percentage-wise, we're not bad.
we're hitting. I made the example yesterday. Okay, if I told you today, because we always do it 6 months ahead, if I told you in July, tell me exactly what your household's going to spend on groceries in 2026, and you have to be within 1%, that would be like saying, okay, I know I spend $800 a month, so $8,000 a year. If you go over by $100, $200, you're outside what I just gave you as a limit, right? That's how well we do with our department heads. Our budgeting is we spend 20 to $25 million and we're within a 1% window. That's pretty good. So,
And I don't think there's any criticism here at all. It's we're just trying to figure out what's going on and why.
yep. And that's why these are hard to watch December, January, February, because there's so many receivables, payables still coming.
Mr. Buxton.
In today's climate, it seems that the federal government is stopping, I mean, they're just saying, stop everything as far as expenses. And there's do you see any potential of the federal government clawing back some funds that we've, like ARPA funds, for instance?
No.
Do you see anything like that happening?
So far, I've heard zero about ARPA or ARPA spending. We receive about $2.7 million in federal funds direct. I shouldn't say even direct, because it does
2.7?
2.7 million a year. And most of that comes through the state. So it's like a state, and those are the ones that we have to audit. $2.7 million worth of program costs. We get other state funding that also is matched with federal funding, child support. It says 66% from the state, but they get matching funds from the feds and to do all this. But in direct, that we would have to audit on a single audit normal basis, meaning it hits a certain threshold each program, is $2.7 million. Of that $2.7 million, we're not worried at this time with those funds. So I think it was elderly, it's not abuse, but it's like the investigations. It's through the AODA department. That was probably our largest one. It was like $800,000 program that we get federal funding for. Otherwise, you see like our food share. It wasn't food share. It was something with food. You get like $40,000. You get 20,000 or 50,000 here, there, and it adds up. But as far as the freeze, the stuff we've heard and talked about, it is not affecting us. And as far as clawing back, I don't see we're not fat when it comes to our programs, so I don't see us feeling some of those issues.
I wonder, like the BEAD program, I mean, that's billions of dollars, and they haven't put in.
I think it may be held up, but
There's
not.
been rumors that the BEAD is sitting out there kind of in a looming pattern. And I blame that on the FCC, that it's a program that's been out there for 3 years and we haven't even gone to bid yet. So federal bureaucracy has held this thing up. They're creating their own rules and everything for BEAD. So yeah, I think some of the providers are very concerned that BEAD is now on hold, and it's been on hold for 3 years already. So it would be easy, low hanging $5.9 billion, put it that way.
Yeah. So we're waiting on federal issues if we're going to see anything. We're more worried, and we did a resolution you'll see at the board where it's mandated funds from the state. So it's not even federal. We'll get off federal talk. For the court system, it's a mandated service. So they're mandating that we have this. It's always the state of Wisconsin versus Trimner, state of Wisconsin versus X, Y, or Z. So the state's mandating we have this service, but they're not funding it. So we're asking during this biennial budget for a minimum of 70 million. We'd like to see 150 million, because that would cover those costs. Now, percentage wise, we're the same as our neighbors, but we're not the same pinch. So I was I'm on a committee for the state so I represent the north and the smaller counties, and we're talking about the court systems and what we don't struggle with yet, but we've seen little bits, but the cost, I think it's Sam, she's executive from Racine County. They have, like last year, they had $600,000 in interpreter services that they had to come off their levy because it's mandated that they have to do these services, but they're not getting reimbursed to have that as part of their court system. We're seeing it with deputies up in the courtroom. That's where we're going to get hit, right? Is if the judge says, I need a bailiff here every day for the court. There's some wishy-washy, is that he has the right to do that if there's somewhere, but that's where we're going to all of a sudden see, okay, we need $120,000 in our levy more than we do to cover those costs. Now you look at a Green Bay, they have to have 8 bailiffs because they have 8 courtrooms and they're behind. So that's where we're struggling, is the mandated services that the state's not funding. So we're pushing for the next biennial to get that funding going. Going back to the executive summary, the other funds that it's the last page, or not the last page, but the third page. The one that you'll notice is the biggest negative is your highway fund. And why that is the way it is we allowed in 2024 $3 million of projects, which you saw W, we saw D, we saw all these projects getting done. We said $3 million. But for 2024, we only had $2 million of funds come in because that's what we did the loan for 2004. So we said we had cash on hand that we're always going to float $1 million of loss or ungrabbed funds from that. So that's where the major overages is. We did $3 million in projects and we only borrowed $2 million. Now in 2025, we allow it where we approved up to $3 million in projects and we borrowed $3 million. So we're more break even this year, where prior years we were always behind. And we did that strategically. We've talked about it for years that they've had funds available because of good winters or whatever we did or we as a county. It really wasn't highway, but overall we were healthy enough to do less borrowing for the taxpayer and use some of our cash. Other than that, they had a pretty decent fall. You know, the snow didn't come early. We didn't have the ice. They got a lot of brushing done, but it wasn't overtime. You didn't see anything that would cause a big loss there, or a net loss. Capital improvement projects, that one again will balance out with journal entries. So any questions on 24? Lots going on. We did a lot of projects, a lot of big money projects. So there's a lot of movement. And when I say we spent 24, we're actually at $34 million of ins and outs. So being $500,000 is not bad.
What's the status of the airport project?
As far as federal funding, we're still good to go. The last I talked to Carl, or last communication we had with Carl, is they submitted their funds that they had to by December 31st to use that chunk of the funding. And they're in the engineering phase, I think is what you got, the same email where we got we're finishing engineering to go to
Design and
bid.
engineering.
Yeah. So bid will start here in the next month or two.
It's in the other project we're looking at is that one out in Kennan, that $750,000. Is that still in an engineering stage?
Cannon project. Oh, that to me, the southern. That's still, Joe updated us at forestry. They did the engineering. It was about $40,000. They have the design plans, which is a box culvert so that it'll have a grate on top. So then the snowmobile club will be happy because they can still use it as a trail. I want to say bids are going out soon, with this spring. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still green light.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the engineering seemed to be reasonable.
Yep. It's really the bids is what's going to drive the price.
Yeah.
Right now, all the engineered estimates are within the budget, which usually they're pretty conservative on those. So unless something, steel prices go through the roof for the grate, or I can't even think what else. The rock, I think that was the biggest. Everybody was upset that it was $150,000 for rock. Everybody was mad about that. Yeah. All right, page 4 is 2025, so we're 8% through the year. Numbers don't really tell you much because it's 1 month in, and yeah, things will be moving back and forth. We had buildings and grounds is going to probably be coming forward. They talked quite a bit about a issue we're having in the basement here with ventilation of the boilers. So at that meeting, they discussed it. There's some, it's not wet rot, but rusting of a ventilation out of one of the boilers. And so we're working with Jamar to come up with a strategic plan that not only fixes the problem, but prepares us for replacing the boilers in the next 15 years. So we talked about turning the boilers the opposite way, so we have less of a run. We talked about re-venting through the building up to the ceiling because the current venting is 8-inch instead of 10-inch pipe or whatever works better. So they're coming up with a strategic plan on and what the request will be. We don't think it'll be that, it's not $1 million project. It's more of the $100 to $200,000 project, if that. And that would be a capital improvement request. TJ's working on some projects.
Could I
go ahead.
just interject here on that? The boilers, they're safe. The vent, the inner vent
Everything's good.
pipe is in good shape. There's an outer shell that is rusted out from condensation. It's like one of those
It's like a
Heatolator
sleeve,
pipes
a
that-
sleeve on the pipe.
the sleeve, yeah. So there's nothing to be concerned about safety wise, but it is something to be concerned about going forward. Seems like a lot to fix that though, but
And a lot of the price came to redo the chimney. I mean, we talked
Yeah.
about the chimney and then turn the machines for future, which we'd save money. We're spending money today to save money on the project for whoever's next 10 years, 15 years down the line, saving Josh a headache. TJ, the biggest thing so IT, you don't see it in here because it's one of those kind of a hidden background cost. Every day, I think it feels like we get a email from Microsoft or from, I don't know, all the products. We have all these different products, right, that we use for digital communications, making sure we can do our job. And every day they change the pay structure, whether it used to be you paid $10,000 and you got the license for the whole company. Now it's a monthly subscription per person, and you can only have this many people until you go to the next license level. And then once you add one, they have to stay on for a minimum of 12. But if that person leaves, you have to create a new license for someone else, and you still pay for the old license until 1 year. And it's getting fun to deal with. And so we believe his general IT costs have skyrocketed, and you won't see it so much in the budget because it gets distributed to every department, but every department budgeted what we thought it was going to be, and it's going to be that 5 or 10% difference that eats you up. But it's frustrating. We're working on it. Nothing you can do because we have to have email. We have to have antivirus. You have to have backups. You have to have
office products.
VLANs,
365.
yeah, at the 365, but what VLANs?
So
and
you use a
servers.
zero-based budgeting system?
Yeah, each year we'll kind of knock it down and go, okay, what's it going to be, and go back up. Yeah. So those are the big ones we know about. That it's January, so it's early, but that are just kind of beat you up over the little things. Server license. Oh, it used to be 15,000, now it's 35, and you're like, what? Where'd that come from? And it's not TJ's. TJ does an amazing job. It's the companies going, no, we're not going to service that, or oh, there's a new structure on how you pay. Health and Human Services, nothing to share there. It's January. Other funds, same thing. Nothing to share there. Cash. So even though we talked about all these ins and outs and big projects at the end of 2024, Our cash balance was $10,500,000, $10,496,006 to be exact, which is good.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go
Go ahead,
back
Mr.
on,
Hellstrom.
on other funds.
Sure.
Veteran services, how are we making out? Did we post Tony's job and
Yep.
are we
we're-
making progress there? So we're not hiring somebody the day before he leaves?
Yep. So we have a plan on that and a timeline, and because he's May 13th, 12th, 6th, something. So we've did the calculations backwards, and then we'll put the ad in. I think it's at the end of this month, and then we'll try to hire by the end of March. We'll have a slight overlap so that that individual can come and get their licenses. So as soon as Tony leaves, they're licensed and ready to go. So thank you, Tony, for giving us a runway. He gave us 6 months so we could plan this. That's very helpful. We've already had individuals that he knows that have voiced interest, so that's positive. It's not a dead zone where it's like, oh no, who are we gonna find? I don't know if they're qualified candidates. I just know they're voicing an interest. So yes, we have a plan to land the plane.
Why is Tony leaving?
Retirement. Gonna find somewhere warm.
Yeah, he's the same age as me.
Well, he's got what, 20 some years in the, yeah. It's recorded. We shouldn't be saying. No. But yeah, military service. He's had plenty of years here. He's gonna go enjoy the grandkids and. Yep.
I just wanted to bring that up because it's not a service that affects everybody in the county, but it affects some people. We've got a very good reputation out of our veteran service
Yeah.
office compared to our surrounding counties. And it would really be nice to keep with that.
Yeah, hopefully, and we got like Tony's great. I mean, he was the assistant to the VSO and then moved up into it, so he learned the job. So it was great. And you'll see there's a slide later that talks about something that Tony has really assisted with, and it's impressive. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Glad you brought it up. Good to keep it on the front burner.
Yeah. Cash, like I said, we were at $10.5 million at the end of last year. That can go, well, cash won't go up and down, but ins and outs still go up and down. Price County sales tax, it's always 2 months behind. As of November, we had $1,296,102, which is 3.3% more than last year. December, if we even get close to our average, say you did 125, 130, we'll be above last year. We already hit our budgeted number, which is good. So that's all general fund for shortages. I had this question. We've talked about this many times with the sales tax. Everybody says, "Oh my gosh, I can't buy anything." But you're still spending the same dollar you always did or more. So you get a raise, 2%. You have more discretionary funds. The discretionary funds might go to groceries or something else, but that's taxable. So you're still spending the same dollar, and actually you're spending $1.20 because you're making more, you're spending more. You just are getting less widgets for that $1.20. So that's why sales tax doesn't correlate with your feeling of how much product you can buy, because the product, you're still spending the dollar.
Well, it correlates the percentage. A percentage of 10 is, you get the same product. It used to be 5, it's 10 now. Percentage of 10 is higher than
The
percentage.
dollar spent,
The
right?
dollar.
But if I say I used to buy 10 widgets for $10, those same 10 widgets are now $12. Or if I'm still only spending $10, I'm only getting 8 widgets. So people go, I can't buy anything. How is sales tax? I only bought 8 of these. They don't correlate the $10 that they've spent. They correlate the goods they received. So
I'm just saying, a
You're getting-
sales tax increase, I mean,
It's
that
based
number's
on
gonna go up,
spending.
spending, and there's certain spending that everybody's gotta do to maintain life.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
just
you're
on
still
inflation alone, you're gonna see that number
in
go up.
America, if we make $1, we spend $1.20. Like that's just normal. So if you're making $1.20, you're spending $1.40. The taxes you're going to collect taxes. Yeah, it's the amount of widgets you get for that $1.20 or $1.40. That's the inflation. That's the offset. That's so.
Amount of eggs.
Yeah, I got my own chickens. I don't know. So again, sales tax, in the end, we've done very well. We're right at what the state average is about 2 point, or above it. It's about 2.3 state average, which is good. Stumpage, this one Jeff's been warning us about for the year. We did end at 740. We might have a couple bucks coming in, but in general, we're right at that, just under at the $750,000 mark, which is $500,000 less than what we budgeted. However, if you look at what we've been over in collection for the last 4 years, that's where we offset it. So our general fund grew, like last year, it would have grown by 439,000. The year before that, it would have grew by 308,000. The year before that, 400,000. So over the last 3 years, we've collected over $1 million more than budgeted. This last year, we would be taking out of the general fund to offset the expenses for the general fund by the $500,000 we were short. So
Any news on carbon credits?
the last time I talked to them, we were in step 9 of the process. And so I talked to Iron County and Ashland County, and I said, when you were told you were in this process, how long did it take? And they said about 8 to 10 months. So for their check to come. So cross our fingers by December. We
By
would have-
December,
That's my
another year.
thought, yeah. But we're seeing positives. Iron County did their first sale and they sold just under $1 million and got a check for 580 after expenses. They had a second sale. I've not heard what the check ended up being, but they'll get a much higher percentage of that because the general costs were covered. Bayfield County got a pretty decent one. Did you talk about it at Northwest Regional Planning?
We did just a smidgen in the round table, but so on the carbon credit stuff. So when we originally were getting into the contract and doing, was it $8 or $12 per credit we were talking? These last sales that Bayfield and Iron did was 23, almost $24 a credit. Now we're 24 months overdue when we thought we would be getting our first check, granted. And I would share the same fear of you that, as regulations start to change now, these companies are saying, rather than me spend millions and millions of dollars on carbon credits to offset the footprint, I'll stick that money into research and development to make a cleaner burning engine.
So that
I'll
market might-
use the airlines.
That
GE,
market
for
might
example.
disappear.
It could, but we have an escape plan that was built into that originally, so.
If they sell nothing and it disappears, we owe nothing. It was just a time Joe.
But if
put
we-
in.
If we jump out of the program, then we're subject to,
We owe the
We owe
$500,000,
them.
yeah.
so it doesn't, there's no
Our best bet is to sit back and
Ride
let
it
it
out.
happen.
day with where
Either
we
they're
are.
gonna cancel the contract and eat the losses, or, or the market crashes and it's gone and they're still eating the cost. But if we go to them and say we're out, then we would have to owe something.
Don't do that.
No, I don't plan on.
So it's in their best interest to go out and make at least one sale for us so they can recoup their program startup fees. Now,
Those
at
costs go on
year
every-
10,
Yeah.
they could say this program is not working out and
Walk away.
we all walk away. Yeah, but it's in their best interest to, because they're the ones who are out the money for the startup cost, not necessarily us. Joe and his team have got a little bit of time, but
And they put plenty of time in. So there's a cost to us, but it's not the level of what
Right.
the second party did. The other.
So back to stumpage going forward, I don't see the market getting much better anytime soon. Are
Yeah.
we gonna budget less?
Yep. So this year we budgeted the same. And based on what we do is Joe and his team marks the wood. They put out a sale. We see contracts for 1 year at a time that are good for 3. So the 2 sales we had this year equaled just about that number. So within 3 years, we should collect that number plus growth. So I don't know what the growth is on an average. It's not a lot. It would be what they're off on their marking. So if they told you it's supposed to bring out 100 cord and it comes out to be 110 cord, we still get the value of that 10 cord. So say there was $1 million in contracts, they were off by 3%, we'd get $1.3 million.
so at our forestry meeting last week, and I'm gonna, because I wrote it down, quoting it, it was a hard number for me to absorb, but Joe said we had 25 active jobs right now. So 25 of our previous sales are being worked on right now. So that should equate to some good stumpage dollars coming in for January and February. But I know that the loggers also all got letters this last week saying the end is here. So we're not going to be shipping. Our spring breakup is coming early is what I'm saying. So
So again, we monitor that. I do believe we're not going to increase like we used to, because for a couple of years we were going up, 100,000, which helps our budget. I think if anything, yeah, we're paused. We may have to go
Well,
down.
My concern is that past overage is gonna dry
It-
up.
Oh yeah, yep. And we monitor that, and yeah.
because we used $1 million to cover the highway stuff. And now we're gonna take 500,000 for the hundreds of stumpage. And I mean, you start taking $1.5–2 million out of your cash fund and you can see it go away quick.
Why you got Carrie and me to help you guys.
Okay.
It's like, why do you have a broker when you have finance, like you invest, is so you don't jump off the cliff. They talk you through it. They help you through the.
If you got the
low
right
part.
broker, we're
True.
trusting you.
I would trust Carrie. No.
Okay, let's keep moving here.
High cost placements, we talked about this. You can see we were really high in the 2019, 2020. We did go, we went real low in 2023. We're starting to see that in 2024. We started to go back up. That was what Megan kind of brought up. It may be a value to have Kayla come and talk about these expenses. She did a really nice job at the Health and Human Services meeting yesterday, just saying, okay, we have 20 kids in placements. Here's what the cost is for foster care. Here's there was $109,000 in, not protective, but the secure placements. And it was 2 kids, right? So there's an extreme difference on the cost compared to 13 kids in foster for 10 grand and whatever the numbers were.
I think it's a good idea. We'll look at that
Yeah.
future agenda when we don't have
Yep.
a whole bunch of other items.
The main reason to bring this up is so in December we were under budget by about $400,000, which is positive. So we had, as of now, we're going to have a little bit more cost, but 515 was the cost. Budget was 913. What we're seeing, and one of the major reasons we're seeing this, is if you go to the next page, is our high cost placements AODA, which is also mental health. That we only budgeted 286,000 and we were at 554. So some of those children and youth costs in the past, we would put everything in children and youth. But the way the state is now funding things, which they're dedicated to mental health and they're pushing funding for that, we need to make sure we're classifying issues to what their costs and what there is. So even if you're a children and youth high cost placement, it may be classified as a mental health reimbursement. So we put it in the mental health area. So if you combine the two, we did a good job on budgeting. It's just one went way over, one went way under, and we'll slowly fix that probably in 2026 once we find out what the state's going to budget for the biennial, because that may be very helpful with mental health funding. Health insurance, we're floating. I still believe it's been a great idea to go self-funded. So we have some revenue still coming in. We'll probably be right at that break even for last year. We had to make up a little bit from the year before, our first year, because we had some really high costs at the end of 2023. 2024 didn't get better. We were having a great year and we had some fun ones towards the end of the year again, whether it was a couple cancers, we had a NICU baby, we had a couple other things that drive up the price real quick. So in general, we did raise the amount we're charging the county and the employee going into 2025 to make sure we're not falling behind. I don't think we're going to get a big fund balance by what we did. However, what I do want to talk about is if we were not self-funded, the fully funded plans would have been looking at us over the last 2 years, and we would have been up 26 to 30, 40%. So there's a lot of counties, nightmare stories, Iowa County, I was talking to him and they got an $800,000 increase on their health insurance and they're not.
So far, so good.
Yep. So we may be using a little bit of our cash to manage it, but we're way ahead, not giving profits to an insurance company to cover the buildings. So it's a little bit more work. I think it's a little more frustration on employee side.
Medical facility working out.
Oh, that's a good point. So we got our January bill from Tailored Health, and so new on the board, new around. We pay 100% of anything that somebody goes to Tailored Health for instead of putting it goes through our insurance fund, but it doesn't go through insurance. And in January, I think the bill was like $12,000 of like visits, and it was like 30 people. So if you take those same costs and go to like your general provider or an emergency room, or like there was an x-ray that we paid, I think it was like $600 for. If they would have went to the emergency room and got that same x-ray, it was $3,500. So there's been a ton of savings by utilizing that product. So hopefully that continues. Employees like it.
What would it have been?
The last time I saw, we had one of those bills. I think we would have paid like 8 and we saved 32,000. So it's about a 3-to-1 savings. For every dollar you spend, you save about 3.
You can really save some money. And I'll give you an example. I just had an MRI a week ago, $4,400 for that MRI versus going to Wausau and spending $650.
So it's called directed care. So we work with Tailored. So say you came in, you got the x-ray or the general consult, and they go, yeah, you need an MRI. They could say, okay, you could go to Aspirus, which will be $3,500, or Marshfield $3,500, or you could go to this directed care, which is in Wausau, which all they do is MRIs. So if I don't know if it's bone and joint or whatever, it'll be $650. Now we don't pay that, but our insurance does, right? So they would go, they may be under their deductible yet, but for the end user, it's $650 versus hitting your deductible overnight. So that's where what Jeff's saying is, but if they were already at their deductible, we would have saved $2,500. Employee would save $2,500.
So that 12K expense that we received would have been about 3 times higher, you think?
At least, if not more, depending on. Yeah, because a couple more emergency rooms, couple of them are not x-rays, which would have been an emergency room thing. Any other questions on the executive?
Okay, moving on, office relocation updates.
Sure. So December, the last week in December, first week in January, we moved Jennifer and Laura downstairs. So Jennifer's in the old tourism office / Leanna Smartch's old office when she had a temporary office over here. So Jennifer's in the corner while they're working on the office, and Laura is down in buildings and grounds. They have a long office, so we just put a desk, and she's sharing an office with Josh Isaacson. That's going very well. We moved the treasurer's office over by the clerk. The clerk's old office. Now it's the treasurer's clerk's office. We have to find a catchy name for that. But that has worked out well. It's a little bit more space. So when we saw people coming in to pay their taxes, there was more waiting area. It just worked out really well timing wise. So that office is all set up. Meredith is back in where my old office was. Jules and Marina are in the middle where Jean and Robin used to be. Or Jules was there for a while. And then Renee is where Carrie used to be. Jennifer's office, which is right off the hallway, has been converted into our mail room, break roomy kind of stuff, but we have a refrigerator in there for employees.
Looks really good. It's a lot bigger, it seems.
It feels more open. It's worked out well with customer service. It allows a few more people to be around, at least to greet individuals, whether they can help them or not, because there's some things the treasurer's deputy can't do and some things the clerk's deputy can't do. But in general, we've heard positive. The biggest complaint is citizens will come in the door and go, dang it, they moved. May not be the words they use, but they'll walk down the hall. So we're trying to get people to park in the back, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's worked out really well. I will say a lot of positive coming out of the office. I know this is probably one of the hardest times for the treasurer's office, with 1, transitioning to a new treasurer, but 2, collecting taxes, and not only collecting taxes general, they're collecting for 7 municipalities, which is more than we've ever collected for. Renee and her deputy did awesome with customer service. It could have been, Renee could have came in and been like, holy cow, I'm overwhelmed. And every person that walked in with a problem could have seen the bad side of someone, but Renee did, and her deputy did awesome with customer service. The number of people that walked in angry and walked out laughing was awesome to see. It was really good. They took their time to educate. Renee took her time to understand what the taxes would be or how the system worked, which helped her with her customer service to explain to the customers, the taxpayers. So it worked out really well. I think it'll get better in the future with the ability for Jules. She'll be able to help with taxes during tax time, the ability for Marina to help during election times. They're going to have a well-run office very quickly. So, and then we're working on the old treasurer's office has been split into 2 offices and a hallway with another little service room. The service room is going to be all our HR files, so it'll be behind 2 locked doors. And then there'll be 2 offices, but we're also going to make it's not a public kiosk, but a workstation. So if you're an employee that has questions about benefits, we do everything online now. You can sit at that kiosk, work with the HR. If you're coming in and you don't have access to a computer to apply for a job, we can set you up to fill out an application. But that should be done 2 months, month and a half. We've ordered the furniture. We've gotten everything started in that office area. Any questions on relocation?
Okay, we'll move on. Courthouse, reducing the number of public entrances.
So this kind of has been on the back burner for a while. It's been talked about in our safety meetings. So once a quarter, we do a safety meeting where the judge is involved, the sheriff, board chair, guardian ad litem. We have Josh, buildings ground, myself. There's a whole team of individuals, somebody from the normal building. So it would be health and human services director. And we talk about what would be the best course of action for safety for employees, for the court system, for citizens visiting. And this building's always been kind of the hard, what do we do? We had everybody spread out throughout the building. Citizens were happy being able to park right on the road and walk in the door and pay your taxes, which is probably one of the high volume offices. But now that we've moved that office down to the other end, it makes sense to discuss reducing the number of entrances. So everything on the north side of the building is actually non-citizen offices. So if you go upstairs, it's a jury room, it's the judge, which are not public access. There's access to them, but it's not a high volume public area. Come down here, it's Office of Admin, your payroll, your HR on this end of the building, and then downstairs it's buildings and grounds. So what I'm recommending is we lock the north door, which is the one that most people come in, and only allow access by key card. So board members, employees, we can all have a key card. You can walk in, you can
You
still.
said board members?
Yep. So you could get a key card, a door card. We'd label it employees only. And then what we would do is we would take all the parking in the back and only make squad cars, and that'll be a citizens parking. So then there'll be plenty of parking for people paying their taxes, coming into the court, that they could park back here. When they enter the building over on the south or east and west, but southeast, southwest, it would be
So
no
where the
steps.
Cars are now would be more public.
Yeah, we would make sure all the employees don't park there, because right now we have a lot of employee parking for the jail, some deputies if
If
they have
they
a
go somewhere else.
they would go across the street. So they would go on the north parking lot with everybody else. So that would open it up to closer parking for citizens, and then squad cars, we need it there because that's how we get out quick. But you'd come in the east or west, southeast, southwest building of the building, which is nice because there's no stairs. It comes in right by the elevator, and it comes in right by the stairs to go either up or down. You go up to the court system, you go down to probation, parole. If you come straight in, you're at the elevator, or you're at the 3 main services. You got your register of deeds, you got your treasurer, your clerk. So instead of letting it as much roaming throughout the building, it localizes it and keeps it in one area. It's something, like I said, we've talked about for a while. It helps safety wise, they're not coming through the building as much.
So the people that wanted to pay taxes would park on the street out here?
Nope, they'd park in the back of the building
Where the squads are now.
where the squad cars are and they'd walk in. Yep. They could also park on the street over here. They could park on the street out front, come in the front door. So it's the south two doors, southeast and west door. Yeah, we would put signs like by 5 cents. So you know how we have our generator? We'd put a big sign that says sidewalk to public entrance. And so you'd walk past the drop box right there, which is in the parking lot for taxes. And then you would come in the back door. It's slightly covered, so there's kind of wind and
So
snow
this is just
protection.
me personally, my 2 cents worth. I like the idea of swapping parking lots for the squads and general public. I like using the north entrance and I don't want to deal with a key card.
It's easy.
That's just me
Boop,
personally.
Walk in. Yeah. Any other thoughts on it? Like, the biggest thing would be getting everybody their key card, which employees have them. It's with board members. If you want to park right by the door and walk in, you can. I know a lot of board members come in the back door because it's no steps and easy to get
As
to.
Tara, I have one. I mean, for
Yep.
board members, you can get into the building anytime you want, even off hours when all the doors are locked, you could get in.
Yeah. That's the other thing. We would like to reduce the hours that the doors are open. Right now, they open up at like 7 or 6:45 in the morning, which most offices aren't open. So there's really no reason to have non-employees in the building. And then at 4:30, when the public access ends, we would shut it off. So you're not, those who are working late, they don't have potential individuals walking through the building. Nights that there's meetings, we open it up because I know like the DNR uses this building, a couple other people.
So what are you looking for here? Just okay to do it? Blessing?
Yeah. It won't happen overnight. Trust me. We got to figure out signage. We got to figure out a lot of things. It would be just by summer is kind of what I'm thinking.
So I guess unless there's some opposition from committee members, we'd say go ahead and keep moving forward with this project or plan.
So that key card would access also the normal building?
Correct. It would be the same one you would use for the normal building. So we'd have to discuss how. So Bobby Hahn, Chief Deputy Hahn, sets up the key cards, and in the normal building we have several doors that use key cards. So like most people wouldn't have access to that, but you'd have access to, I think it's what is the south door closest to the armory. You could get in that and go upstairs rather than go to the health department and go to the elevator to go upstairs as a board member or employee.
If there's no other comments, I guess unless there's any objections from committee members, would give you our blessing for now.
All
Keep
right.
moving forward.
Sounds good. And we do have with this, my understanding is we have someone from the state coming to look at the court system for safety. So getting ahead of this it was probably going to be one of the recommendations we were going to get from the state patrol. Any question for Brian while he's here? All right.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, number 5, land sale ordinance. Just briefly, we're looking at rescinding, this is 5A, rescinding taxation ordinance 440 and replacing it with the draft ordinance that's in your packet. The purpose of it being on the agenda today is just to put the information out there for everybody to look at, discuss the draft, come up with any questions, and this won't be till next executive meeting that will look for approval of this rescinding the resolution and enacting the new ordinance in its place. And I'll let you embellish more if you want to, Nick or Megan.
Yeah. So we've gotten together as a group to come up with the court case Tyler versus Hennepin County, that we need to do something different with our tax deed, tax in rem properties. We already went through the zoning department to recommend the resending of ordinance 511, which gives zoning and land information or land use committee the role of selling these. So we're actually moving that role into the executive committee to do the couple steps we need, whether it's approving a sale or approving, there's a couple things in there that a committee needs to do. In the long run, or in the short of it, we ended up going through and saying, what's the best way to dispose of these, based on the proper, or the new rules. We're saying we want to do a CMA, which would give you a general cost with outside services, saying this house would go for sale on the market at $100,000. Perfect. We now have something in writing that says this is the value of the home, which we have to make first attempt to sell it at its market value. So we would go to auction, put it on that for $100,000. If we don't sell it, then the rules say we can reduce that cost and try again. And then it would run the price up, which normally that's how we've done it in the past. We set it for the minimum and let her go, and we've done well. But in order to follow the new law, we have to get somebody to tell us what the market is, reduce, or
And who would that be?
Price
You said,
the CMAs. So,
CMA, comparative market analysis.
yeah, it's done by realtors. And so what they'll do.
local realtors.
Well, depends. So what we're going to do is, if we know we're going to do this process and we know we have 10 properties, we'll put an RFP in the paper saying we have 10 properties. What will you charge us to do the CMAs on all these properties? So they would bid on them. So Birchland, Northwoods, and I don't know who else is around here. There's several
There's a
places. They could put in saying we'll do the CMAs. We tell them what we want to see in the CMA. And then we have documentation of what the market value would be. And
Yeah,
then,
we'll have a packet that we put together and put it out for bids, just like,
just like we normally do, it's just we had to add that step. We found that auction is going to be way easier because then you don't have to go back and get reapproval.
So the other big issue on this ordinance is that after, let's say it went to sale and there was a check.
Profit, yep.
Now we can't absorb that check. That's got to go in
Correct. So we put in there that we want to,
for it.
there's a fee that we take. So,
And
we,
eventually it goes to the state.
yep.
Nobody claims it.
So the day we sell it, we write a check. Well, not
Right.
the day, but after the sale, we write a check to the past address and owner. If it's unclaimed, then it goes to the state and sits there.
Unclaimed.
Yep.
So there's no benefit.
The benefit is getting it back on the tax roll. Yep. We're not realtors. We're not here to make a profit. We're here to get it back on the tax roll. We put in a fee structure of $2,000, I believe, per property.
So that 5 years, you could put that money and invest it, or it's got to
Nope.
be in a drawer somewhere.
Well, yeah, I guess because it would be uncashed check. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until you get it to the state, because they cash it, keep it. But we and these are the little details would be, how much we discussed and said for each property we're dealing with, we believe there's about $2,000 in time and effort placed by the treasurer, by Evan, by myself, by buildings and grounds, by legal. That does not include the title searches and any legal deed process. That's a fee that goes on there, but there's above and beyond that we don't want to track. We have to have a reasonable number. We can't put like, oh, every property's $20,000. A reasonable number of what we could justify the general costs. If it's visiting it, if it's looking at, having those committee meetings to discuss it. The CMAs would go on each property as an expense. The title search will go on it. Any newspaper ads go on it. So we get all that back as long as we can sell it for greater than that price.
any further discussion regarding this? Or do you want to just take it home with you and look it over?
So the 511 was already recommended for rescinding. That'll go to the April board meeting. This one, you guys can make it's on the agenda, I believe, that you could make a motion to rescind 440. Yeah. So under 5A, you could do the motion to get that done and out of the way, or you could wait till your next meeting. As long as it's done by the April board meeting, that you recommend the rescinding of 440, and then we have time to do a public hearing.
In land use, we already did that. right?
511. Yep. This is 440.
What's the thought there? Do you want to rescind that today, or do you want to have time to digest a little bit and do it at the next executive meeting?
I think we should resend it now. I've dealt with the land. Keep it moving.
Okay,
You gonna make the motion?
I'll call for a motion then.
I'll second it.
Motion by Erickson, second by Barkstrom to rescind taxation ordinance 440 at this time. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Is there any more discussion regarding the land sale ordinance itself?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Hellstrand.
$1,000 fee. If we take a property in November and our auction's in April, heating and electricity and maintaining that building.
That would be above and beyond. So
above
if
and
we
beyond.
get electric bills, we put special. If we get like a city property, we have to keep the property's snow removal or mowing. Now we're working with the cities. Like we have some that are really close, but if they're not, we would say city go plow, do the sidewalk and put a special on it. And then if we sell it for above and beyond all the specials, they would get their money back.
So that 2,000 is just kind of covering our administrative costs for shuffling the paperwork from off.
Correct. Yep. Or making the packet, like Evan spends time making a packet. Evan spends time doing pictures of these places. He works with the auction company. We have meetings with Evan. It's all little things added up. And instead of going, oh, Nick went with Evan to that property to lock it up, and we spent 2 hours and that cost this much plus benefits, we just say $2,000 per property. Some are going to cost you a little, some you're going to gain. Vacant properties are cheaper, right? to deal with.
Regarding this ordinance that's in the packet too, there's maybe a couple typos and definition there that those two things will change or be updated, but
Yeah, page 2 under 4A, it says within 5 days of the count instead of counties. And then one thing we do have to, I'm going to work with Megan on is everywhere in this ordinance, it says it's a tax deed lands. So, and then in our definitions, it says tax deed lands. We want to make sure 7335 encompasses tax in rem and tax deed properties. Those are the two processes you use. And I don't know if the processes that you use kick out a tax deed land. So we just want to make sure the titles are all right with tax deed versus tax in rem versus tax deed lands. The legalese behind it all.
You want to make sure 7535 encompasses all that?
Yeah, the definition of tax deed lands, we're using it properly because we use the tax in rem process.
other than that, it's going to stand as written unless we have changes to add, and we can discuss that at the next meeting. Or modifications to make, I should say. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, Price County Airport Property Tax Procedure.
All right, this one's been a fun one. We've all learned a lot during this process. So a couple of years ago, personal property was eliminated at the state level, which affects trailer parks. Anything that you're leasing, you're putting a personal property on land. It used to be taxed differently. Now it's assessed and it's taxed differently than it was. This affects the airports a lot. So we got a tax bill as Price County for all the properties, all the hangars on the airport. So with the short notice we got, what we ended up doing was we worked with the assessor. The assessor gave us the value of each hangar, and then we took the tax bill and distributed based on those assessments. With that, we didn't know if it should be one pay two pay, or three pay. So different municipalities allow different paying for taxes. So they are located in the city of Phillips, and they are a three pay municipality. So we allowed these individuals that got a bill, which isn't really a tax bill, but we're treating it as a tax bill because it's the county's tax bill that we're collecting from these hangar owners, three pay. So some paid in full. That's not really the argument, but so we followed what the tax bill would have been. The problem is as we go, we've been updating leases saying, okay, personal property was your responsibility. There's no such thing as personal property anymore. Now you owe Price County this tax bill because we're getting taxed on the property. What we originally thought we wanted to come here and say is, how do you want this process to work? Do you want us to keep doing three pay? Do you want us to be having them assessed and distribute the taxes based on what we get taxed? Three pay is a pain in the butt because some of them it's like $200, $400. It's hard to track them because it's not in Renee's Novus system. It's just it's an invoice that's a spreadsheet. So now we're spending all this time trying to track them down. We had 4 people not paying time. So we told them that you're going to get interest and penalty, which we'll put on there, but it's, again, pain in the butt. So we were going to come up with just solid rules to follow this, keep it being a pain in the butt. However, I think it was last week, Sylvia saw the agenda, so the Register of Deeds, and came forward and said, there's a way to fix all this. And it's called BFI. BFI. So Buildings and Improvements Document. So what this does is it's filed in the treasurer's or the Register of Deeds office, and it goes to the tax lister and it generates a tax bill. So we're saying that this is like its own island property, and it takes off of our bill. So eventually ours could be zero if we could get everybody to do this. So right now it's the responsibility of the owner of the hangar in our case, or if you were a trailer park, it would be the owner of the trailer. So the owner of the hangar could go and say, oh, cool, have this filled out, get it all legalized, put it in there. I'll get my tax bill just like I would get on my house or whatever property. Because it's the hangar owner, there's really no incentive for them to run and go do this. So what I'm requesting is that we front the bill. We go and we have legal just do this. We have 22 hangars? 23 hangars, I don't remember. 20 plus hangars. We just work with a legal, whether it's Bryce or Spear or whoever. They're the professionals in putting these BFI documents together, or should be, as land. Have them fill it out for all of them and file it on our behalf in those owners' name, saying, look, you get a tax bill. It would make our tax bill zero. We don't have to track them down. If they sell the hangar to somebody else, this BFI document goes with it. The assessor, when they assess those buildings every year or whenever their assessments due, it would go against this document. It would change the assessment. It would change the tax bill. It would adjust the taxes for everybody. So I don't know what the upfront cost would be. I don't think it's a ton, but I'm recommending us, instead of doing all the hassle on the back end, is to literally RFP and ask a lawyer what it would cost to have them do these 20 hangars.
Do you need to get the owner's permission in writing?
I
to do
don't
this?
think so, because it's their hangar, and we would say, based on the lease, this is yours. They get a tax bill through us or through the taxing. We would work with the hangar owners. I'm not going to surprise them. We would let them know how, we'd have the legal send a letter saying we're going through this BFI process. Just so you know, instead of us or getting a bill from the county on your taxes, you'd get a regular tax.
And then it would go back to 2 pay?
No, it'd be 3 pay because
Still
it would
3
be,
pay?
it'd be a tax bill through the city of Minnesota,
Okay.
of Phillips.
Couple things. One is the current process right now, as we're doing invoicing, then if they don't pay, we have really no recourse but to go to collections, go to small claims court and try to collect. Going back to this direction, it's actually a tax bill. Then you can start the process of actually taking the property if they don't pay. because it's back on the tax.
Mhm.
So that's
Like that.
Yeah, I do
where
too.
it's, but so in the end, it's gonna be better for us. Yeah, it's
I
gonna be
think it's a
cost up
smart way to
front.
go. The only decision we have to make is whether we want to pay for it or put the onus on the hangar owners. And
We
to
can't
make it
force them.
quick and clean, I think we should just go ahead and do it unless the price tag becomes
Yeah,
astronomical.
I'll
I guess
yeah.
look at that, and if there's any alarms going off, let us know before you do it. Go ahead, Mr. Hallstrand.
So not being totally familiar with, do we own the hangars?
No.
We own the property and we charge them a lease to be on our property.
correct.
Couldn't we incorporate it right into, as part of their lease? We can't do that. And what happens when now we build these new hangars? We're, as a county, are we taxed? I thought we were tax exempt.
Our hangar will be.
All right.
Yeah, because it's our building, just like our normal building.
We don't pay tax on this building.
Correct. We
Alright.
don't pay tax on the land out there, but the property, the structure itself, is
property
the
is not.
improvement is taxed. And because they got rid of personal property tax, that's how they were taxed on that improvement.
Yeah. So
It
they
now
always had a bill.
Correct. They always
Personal.
had a bill.
Right. They always, should have always had a bill. Personal property, the reason it went away is because it was an unmanageable tax. But I just wondered how we had done that in the past. We didn't collect their personal property bills and go after them. It went to them.
Yep,
You're
City
saying
of
this
Phillips.
form will do the same thing
Correct.
now. And
It'll go
and
back
makes
to the old
total
way.
sense.
So City
Yeah.
of Phillips always collected that personal property tax and dealt with it. This form will put it back on. It'll be a property tax instead of a personal property tax, but they'll get a tax bill on that hangar property.
So the
Building.
content of the building is not taxed at all.
No,
No.
the structure.
Do we have anybody out there we have problems with?
We had 4 no pays.
Really?
I can't remember names. Well, we had several calls and I'm like, why am I getting this? And so again, Jules did an awesome job and Carrie did an awesome job where people called and said, why am I getting this bill? And you had to go through the whole personal property and they, oh yeah, I realized I didn't get that bill this year. This offset it. And then we had some upset. Why'd it go up $80? That was a
So
long.
just
thing.
regarding those 4 no pays, we have no recourse now unless we take them to small claims.
Correct.
But this will
Well,
fix that.
some we do because we've been putting it in the lease that this would be an unpaid something. So
We did amend, if
they didn't Yeah.
sign that addendum to the lease, it's still,
yeah, we tried our best, and then all of a sudden Sylvia came and was like, "No, the state just released this new thing." And we're like, "Yup, let's do this." It's
Do
just a
we-
matter of
I-
how get it.
Go ahead.
Can I say one thing? One did call yesterday and said they found the bill and they are going to. So you're down one. But also, I think it's a new system that people are getting used to.
Yeah.
Do we need to have any kind of motion here or just give you the green light to keep moving forward?
As long as you guys are all on board, I don't need a motion yet. I'll go get. I have a meeting with Bryce this afternoon about something else, but I'll bring this up, see if what it looks like. I'll talk to a couple other law firms and just say we have a bulk project. What will it
Sure.
cost?
Okay, unless any committee members have objection, I'd say you have the green light to go keep moving forward with this.
Okay.
Okay, next item, number 7, resolution, ARPA obligation reporting. You have that in the packet. It says now therefore be it resolved that the Price County Board of Supervisors hereby authorize the reporting of the completed services and project as listed above with the identified total cost of $908,808.68 on the annual project and expenditure report that is due by April 30th, 2025. Basically, the feds are looking for how we're going to spend this money. We have to give them this, but it can be edited going forward, but we still have to give them something.
Yes, so we're offsetting, we're saying we had contracts in place, we're using the 948 of unallocated ARPA funding to pay for things that are general or our levy, so it puts that $1 million from a protected savings account into our general savings account, meaning we can go back and say, oh, we need X, and we have $900,000 to do it.
Mr. Palchek,
Make a motion that, we forward this, accept this, forward it down to the county board.
No second it.
okay, motion by Palchek, second by Bartstrom. Any further discussion regarding this resolution being forwarded to the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item, number 8, reallocation of highway loan proceeds. This is money that's left over from a $500,000 loan. We call it the yellow equipment loan or fund. The grader costs less than the $500,000, so we need to have discussion on what to do with the leftover funds. Do we use it for something else? Do we turn it back in and use it against principal? I'll let you take it from here, Nick.
Yeah, so out of highway committee, they had a discussion. So we borrowed $500,000 based on, we were gonna buy a new grader. In the end, the grader came in at approximately 350,000, give or take a couple $1,000. That leaves 150,000 of loan proceeds that need to be allocated. And the reason we need to allocate them is you as a board put forward a resolution saying we are borrowing $500,000 for use of X. Well, X was spent, there's proceeds left. You can't just take and use it for something else without you guys giving permission at executive committee. There was a lot of discussion knowing we do have equipment needs going forward on how the highway would like to see this used for other equipment going forward, along with, again, future borrowing. There are two options. One, like Brian said, we could pay off the loan early. So we'd pay $150,000 on principal right away using those loan proceeds. It would save us about $30,000 in interest. And then we could approach 2026 on how we want to deal with yellow equipment. The other option is you keep the money, the 150,000, which you don't save the $30,000 in interest, but you start working on yellow equipment. You put that towards a purchase going forward. So this committee needs to decide what to do with loan proceeds. I mean, highway talk, they have a whole list of stuff
Yeah.
they need. None of it's under 150, so they'd still need to come up with additional funding. So maybe that doesn't happen till 2026. So do you pay it down and then decide if it's necessary, you borrow it back?
Well, I believe highway is good to want it, spend it on equipment that
Yep.
needs to be replaced. I don't think there's any question there. My thought is, we keep the money, not put it against principal, but have Roger give us what he needs and why. I mean, give us something before the next meeting, so we know what we're spending it on. And then another thing I'd like to comment on, I was at the highway committee meeting and I must have misunderstood because we talked about offsetting the next year's $500,000 loan for equipment, but the ordinance was only for a one-time loan. So there is no recurring loan.
No.
I don't know if anybody else thought that way, but that's the way I was looking at it because I didn't read the ordinance before I came to the meeting, and I have a copy of it here if anybody wants to see it, but it's just a one-time thing not to exceed 500,000.
Yep. And yeah, all of our loans are a 1 year like that, where we have to come forward and request the borrowing again. We don't have, I think we don't have any that are automatically reoccurring. So
Well,
the 500, the three,
Few, but those are short-term.
yeah, the 3 and the 4 are not reoccurring, but if you don't do them, they're
That's
almost
a different
forced.
subject.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess,
Yeah.
So then my question on that, Brian, is so then we could not take that 120, put it into the 500,000 next year, so we'd only have to borrow 300,000?
You could.
well, we could,
yeah.
but I mean, that's just in theory. We'll have the money, we could save the money and say that's what it's go for, but the approval of that next $500,000 loan hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet, but so you'd be looking for 300,000, not 500,000.
We could look at it
Correct.
that way, yeah, and we could state that. We could make a statement
I
saying.
guess the only thing that as the being on the highway committee, we have purchased a lot of equipment. Not that we don't need a lot of equipment at highway because we are way behind, but we have spent a lot of money in equipment the last 2 years for highway.
And I agree. I guess
Right
that's
on.
why, like, if a Rogers got something that's really, really, really dire need,
Yeah.
then maybe we could go ahead and do it, but let's see what he comes back with. And then if nothing else, put it towards the like a fund, yellow equipment fund. Mr. Barkstrom?
I think one of the options that you mentioned of, we got this extra money and find a place to spend it would be, it'd be quite an incentive to look hard and spend it. I don't know about that.
Well, when you're buying equipment, $150,000 isn't
very
gonna buy you
much.
much. But we do have stuff that's there, like more tractors from the late 80s. And it's not gonna be spent frivolous, that I can guarantee you.
Right.
You know, we've got 2 trucks that are parked that we can't use, 2 triaxles, and they'll be sold at the spring auction. I would push for option 2.
That being,
Used for highway. I have it up.
Used
But
for highway equipment.
do we just put it into a fund and add funds to it? Because you can't get much even though it sounds like a lot, you can't get much for it.
No,
So we just put it into a fund and just pay interest, or do we maybe pay down the principal on this loan?
well,
Because we're gonna have to come up with a resolution to add more money anyway.
yeah, why don't we see what Roger comes up with first?
Okay?
Yeah, I think yeah, well, that could be a problem. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. So I think Roger can come up with a plan. I think we're looking. IT's got some big projects coming. We have all of our other loans out there. I think after having the discussion and knowing that it was a 5-year loan and we could save the interest, when Carrie and I kind of started formulating how this would look, it may be better to step back and not pay it back today, but to go, okay, what does our debt look like for 2026? What projects do we have? Is this 150 better used towards principal to keep something lower? Is it better used towards an IT project? And then we look at the yellow equipment. Is it better used? Like, I think we need to step back and look at the whole rather than just go, oh, we originally bought a piece of equipment. The remainder should go to a piece of equipment. There's a whole county we got to think about. And I don't disagree. The equipment, there's a list, right? That we got going that's got to be addressed, but is 150 going to address it? I don't think so. I think we formulate a plan rather than just go, oh, cool, it's 150. And we're not looking at the $4.5 million other loans that we have going. Brian and I have talked about, which one was it? The $300,000 loan where it's like, do we rip the Band-Aid off and stop paying interest on that one and figure something out? So I think we need to formulate a plan and present it in the next couple months rather than just go, oh, go buy something or set it aside to go buy something. I think it's just set it aside. Don't repay to save the interest. Yeah.
I'd say wait at least another 30 days till the next meeting.
Yeah.
But if we do decide to pay the principal back, the quicker the better,
Yes.
or pay down on the principal.
Yeah.
let's
The
put it that
other
way.
issue that I was just reminded of by Carrie is we have to be cautious. This one would be hard to hit, but it may be possible, is arbitrage. So if you borrow money at a lower rate than you're getting interest, you have to spend it within 90 days. You have to spend it 50%, which we'd be okay. There's rules, like you have to spend so much of the money within 90 or 180 days, and then so much within the year before arbitrage. And right now we're getting a really good interest rate compared to our borrowing rate. So it's better to sit. We're a positive 1 or 2% right now on this loan rather than a negative. Yeah. So we're okay sitting on it today.
Yep.
Now, if this was a 6% loan, I'd say pay it back and we'll figure it out later. But we're still in that close to arbitrage.
Well, that makes sense to sit on.
Yeah.
Or at
Yeah. We're a
least
positive, I'd say 1.5.
till we have to
2%.
do something.
Yeah.
We
I'll
have
spend.
in our highway department equipment program replacement 75 horsepower tractor at $60,000 and disc bind mower at $14,000. So it would buy a tractor and a mower. $147,000 a triaxle chassis. So this is an example of what that would do at highway.
Without adding any additional funds.
Yeah.
Mr. Hallstrand, do you have some?
So, yep, sometimes when I just sit back and don't talk, some of my thoughts get answered, but one of them was, we, the county, are not in a position to borrow money to make money, and you answered that question. Any one of the departments, and I was gonna throw forestry and IT, law enforcement's probably got vehicles that they're looking. I mean, any department would gladly, if you said, hey, can you spend $150,000? My question would be, what happened that the bid came in? I can see it coming in $20,000-$30,000 under, but $150,000, our budgeted number was a real high number then.
I don't know if this answers it or not, but the resolution states not to exceed 500,000. So
Okay,
the full amount was borrowed, I think, before the actual price tag of the piece of equipment came in. So maybe we should look at doing that a different way. I don't know.
Yeah, and we've made the mistake in the past of not borrowing the full amount and then getting, like in this case, we're in a good position to have the 150 sitting there, where all of a sudden we didn't borrow the right amount, and now all of a sudden we've lost permission to borrow it, and now you can't. So that's where that comes from, is we borrow up to that limit, but now we have to make a decision on what you do with it. We didn't list 10 things.
That
So-
kind of explains why there's such a
a
discrepancy.
little bit, but continuing on with some of my thoughts, where we have a process in place for the highway shop where we are going through and we come up with a 3 and a 5 year plan of equipment that we feel we need to spend. I'm a big believer in, if we can save $30,000 worth of taxpayer dollars in interest week, that's a good thing. I mean, that would be a good thing, and we have a process. But now Larry just pointed out a couple things within that yellow fund that we were going to replace that we could buy and take them off, and maybe that allows us to let some other department slide their thing into our borrowing versus, because in the highway, and we talked about Alan's green numbers earlier. Part of the reason that we're spending a little bit more on our highways is because I think that we have a lot of them, and they're in very poor shape, and they've been let get to be poor shape. So we need to try and get caught up, and that costs money. Well, the longer we kick some of this stuff down the road, obviously Blacktop, when Larry started here, while we were doing our own blacktopping, but the cost of a mile per road was probably $30,000 versus $250,000 now. So some of this stuff, as we kick it down the road, costs us a lot more money.
I think that's why we're at where we're at. Not to sound
Right.
like a politician, but
Right.
previous, myself included,
so
probably,
back to
it's
this-
been kicked down the road
Back
too
to this
long.
money, we have a process for replacing equipment, but now, like I say, Larry just
It was
popped in and
underfunded.
said, here's some things that we planned on doing in 2026. I'd be okay with saying, let's go buy that tractor and mower so that we can get out and mow some more shoulders of the roads. But then let's not just fill in behind and say, oh, hey, we got an extra piece of equipment here. You
Yeah.
eliminate that one out of the budget so that we can spend that money on one of the other departments
Yeah.
next year.
But
in
you nailed it
2026.
too. We have a process. There's a
Right.
list for 5 years. We had plans on how we borrow it. And so now all of a sudden, because we have a little bit of proceeds, we're like, oh, let's skip ahead. Or do we make a plan for the yellow equipment, which is a whole nother list that you're not reading off, that we know we need another grader. We
'Cause
know we
that's
need
expensive. Right?
a bulldozer coming up. We know we need a couple things. I think on our end, it's not up here, but option 3 is to sit back and kind of reevaluate all of our debt and look at where we can save, what we can do with the ability to have a little better interest rate. That helps right now. But the Freightliner, we borrowed for that. For forestry, it was 175. It was 200,000. Well, we don't need to borrow for that again next year, so that might cover the IT project. But if we can use a little cash to cover it, then we don't have to borrow something for the IT project. I think we need a bigger picture than just should it be highway or shouldn't it be highway. I think it, like you said, if you hand it to Brian, the sheriff, he's going to find a way to buy another squad car
Or body scanner.
water scanning. We got that on. Well, that's on the list.
Yeah, I realize that, but I'm saying, I guess what I'm suggesting here is that rather than us make a decision today,
Sit back.
you guys sit back, kind of evaluate it a little bit more as to what would be the most advantageous for not just us, the county, but also the taxpayers' dollars that we're potentially saving.
Mr. Barkstrom.
Another in the thought process, I think we should do all we can to help reduce taxes somehow, because this past year, I mean, some of the taxes went up 20%.
I agree.
And if there's anything in this process that we could reduce, scrubbing the budget, do whatever we can to help, because Wisconsin is a highly taxed state. And we're in it.
And I do believe we shouldn't have a jump like that going forward. But the big jump came from the approval of 1.5 additional, or it was 1.1, $1.2 million in debt. I mean, that was a 16% increase right there. That you can't just look at like in Elk, it was 22%.
So we increased the debt, but
1.2, the highway borrowing was all of it, but it was 1.2
extra
million
16 miles of road.
and this
Road and
equipment.
vehicles,
Yeah.
equipment.
So that was a calculated change by the board.
Okay, so we know
I
what
don't
it is,
see
but
those changes going
anything
forward.
we can do to reduce that
Maintain it. We'll call it maintain.
Mr. Erickson.
debt.
Just to verify that when we borrowed that 500,000 not to exceed, that was brought from the highway department.
Yep.
So I guess I'm not understanding why that would go to the other departments when it was the highway department request.
It's a county borrowing. The county requested the highway requested a yellow piece of equipment. We
But then
borrowed
the
for that.
count, but it's
It's
that's
not
why I
their
would
bill.
say that it still should stay in highway, because they're the ones that requested that borrowing.
Well-
But the argument is you borrowed too much for highway. They needed $350,000. That was what they got, was $350. The county borrowed $500,000 to cover it. They're not paying it per se, the county is.
In my mind,
Yeah.
we gave highway approval to buy a grader and they couldn't spend more than $500,000 on it.
Okay.
And we borrowed the full $500,000 before we knew how much it would cost.
It's not highway money.
So
per
we
se.
didn't
It's
really,
not highway money, but
We
it
allowed them
was
to buy a
bought-
grader.
That is why we were borrowing that amount, was for a highway equipment
yeah,
project.
and we got it. I mean,
When
it's,
that fit, we would pay it back. You'd say, put the 150 back.
That's
to
what
the
I would
bank.
say. You would put it back into the highway department that to.
Well-
But does that set a precedence that let's shoot real high on all of our budget items and our ass in the future so that money stays in our budget?
Well, I'm not saying it stays in the budget. I say you pay down part of your other balance in highway. Pay part of your,
that would be with
That will be that loan.
option one.
right. That's what I would say.
Well, let's,
Evaluate.
not in a bad way as far as it's more, we're getting more interest in savings than we're paying. That's what it sounds like, right? In a nutshell,
Kind of, yeah.
we can get away with it for a
Because your
certain
first
amount of time.
$350,000 is already out the door.
Yeah.
So you're not getting interest on that and you're paying interest on that. So the 150 you're arbitraging, the 350 you're
Right,
paying
yeah.
interest. Yeah.
So, Mr. Hallstrand, did you have something else?
Well, just a little violation is not any worse than a big one.
We're not breaking the law as an
We still got so many days to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
something.
We've spent more than 50% of the proceeds.
We're
have a
complying with
plan
the law.
for it. Yeah. It's
Mr.
just the
Palachuk.
term you use.
The next yellow iron purchase is listed as a wheel loader in 2027, 280,000. And in 2028, replace another motor grader at 450,000.
Big
So
money.
how's that grab you?
Yeah,
Big money coming.
we don't have enough to purchase either one of them right now. So we'd have to come up with a borrowing resolution to add additional funds if we kept them.
Yeah.
The best
We'll
thing might
figure
be
it
to just pay down the principal and then go for the full amount as per the plan when the time comes.
Plan by it.
Yeah. I think what we'll do is we'll come up with a structure where we pay it. We restructure all of our debt across the board. What does that do for the best interest of saving interest for the taxpayer, getting us to a number? We'll also look at what it looks like if highway keeps the 150. Is it get us some equipment? We'll work with Roger, or does he have a other priority piece of equipment that we'd have to add to it going forward? But then we only have to add a little bit instead of the whole cost because you have the 150. we'll look at options.
I guess if we kept it to add to a future loan to buy a bigger piece of equipment, while we're deciding what we're gonna buy and how much to borrow to add to it, that's gonna sit in an interest-bearing account. Are we gonna be violating any laws by
No, I think timing wise.
not spending it in time?
The other thing you have to think about is like, we got these loans at 3 point, whatever,
Or
4 or
something?
something. I don't know what the loan rates are gonna be in December.
Right.
So you might get a worse loan for that 150. We'll work all the numbers. There was no need for an actual decision today. It
No,
was a
but it's good-
conversation.
good
Yeah,
conversation.
But you'll have something more for us in March, some more better options and making sure we're doing
And
things
this is probably
legally.
gonna happen again, so maybe it'd be a good idea to
This
come up
happens
with
all
a
the
plan,
time.
so everything's consistent going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, we did it. We had $40,000 set aside for something. We only spent 10 of it, and so we used 30 for something else. And you guys bring it forward.
Actually, the interest rate's 4.98. I got it.
We'll make a plan. We'll make a debt structure plan.
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting and discuss it further. Moving on, agenda item number 9, county library plan, number of board appointments.
Right. So our county library plan says that we look at this each year. It's up to the board chair to make appointments for the county library board. So I just quick did all the math so you guys could see it. So we follow our library plan. Under 43.603A, the summary of appointments, this is how you figure out how many appointments you would do. So if it equals, so number 1 is equal to at least 1/6, but less than 1/3, it's 1 member. You can see 2 members, 3 members. So I requested the expenses for all 3 libraries. Park Falls was $261,093, and that's levied expenses, not total expenses. So they get other funding. So I think with Ashland County, they get like $80,000 from their usage. We do 91,510. They have other sales. So out of that, if you do the math, it's 35%. And then if you go back to that other thing, it would be 2 members, which does reduce it from past years. Ogama, the municipality, gives $36,000 even. The library service fund is $18,000 even, which is interesting. That one ends up being 50% or 3 members. In the future, this one we'll have to watch, because if the library services funding goes down by $1 or the Ogama municipal funding goes up by $1, it would actually go to 2 members, because it would be less than 50%. So in this case, it happened to be exactly 50 or more, which is 3 members. Phillips is $179,040 of municipal funding. The county library services collected is $172,207, which is 96%. So they have 4 members. I just put it in a quick spreadsheet in your packet, just different way of viewing it. So if you go to the number of board members, Park Falls, the 35% is 2 members. Right now we have Karen Tesmer, Bob Kopish, and Kathy Rose were appointed by the board chair. Because we have to go down to 2 members there, it just happens that Karen Tesmer, she would have been renewed this year, or Brian would have had to appoint this person or someone else in that position. But that'll be a non-renewal to go down to the 2 members. Ogama, with the 3 members, they have Al Schneff, and Lynn Granberg. They both are currently members, leaving 1 spot vacant. So that'd be up to Brian to determine whether or not he wants to appoint somebody. And then Phillips is at 96% of 4 members. They have Bruce Marshall, which is up for appointment as of 4/30/2025, Christy Spear as of 4/30/2025, and then Brian and Jeff both are 2026 and 2027 respectively. So at the county board meeting, if Brian has appointments ready, you as a board would confirm those or accept the appointments.
And I do. I talked to Bruce Marshall and Christy Spear, and they're both willing to continue on.
Okay.
So they'll on the agenda if you haven't seen it yet. As far as the Ogama, well, we're right on the bubble, whether we have 2 or 3. Talked to Lars, and they have an uneven number of board members total right now. And if we added the third one, they'd have a dilemma as far as having an even number of members. So for those 2 reasons, I'm going to leave it vacant. I guess that's something that I can do, so I'm going to. Unless there's some objection.
At any time, the municipality could amend their budget by $1 and it would take that position away. And I think that's what Brian's trying to say is it's right on the fence. It's actually on the fence.
Any questions for Nick or myself?
And again, we're using the most recent numbers. I use numbers that they submit. So if they don't have the most, this is what they submitted to us as their numbers. I did confirm them. I didn't just, they had to give me their budget. They can't just give me like, here's a random number. That's how we came up with these.
Okay, move on. Number 10, broadband equity access deployment BEAD projects.
Just a quick update. In November of 2024, we endorsed Norvado's application for BEAD. You did that via resolution. You also committed some funding if they were to receive it. I had to do a follow-up letter just saying we as Price County endorse them. So they got a letter of endorsement along with the meeting minutes and the agenda. So my understanding is Norvado. So they came to us with a plan that covered the whole county. In the last 30 days, I received calls or emails from 3 other telcos, Brightspeed, Bug Tussle, and Bertram. I haven't heard of them. All 3 of them I talked to and asked what their project was. And then I talked to Brian and the vice chair, Mr. Allstrand, and their projects were specific to areas of Price County instead of the whole. So we did reach back out to all 3 of those with a letter saying we've chosen to endorse Norvado. The reason is they covered the whole county. We also have had success with them in the past. There was something else I put in the letter.
Well, we believe if we endorse more than one,
Oh, that's what it was.
it would dilute our
Yeah.
further points.
So Bug Tussle is a tower company. Why would they be interested in digging cable?
They do fiber to
They
the
do a
home as
fiber,
well.
Yeah.
Oh, they would bid on that project?
Yep. So they're doing fiber to each one of the towers or several of the towers. So what they're saying is from that fiber, they would do a BEAD project left and right or north and south or east and west, whatever it would be from that core or the central circle.
Middle mile,
Middle
final
mile.
mile is what it's called. So the project that we endorsed Bug Tussle on was basically a middle mile fiber to the tower projects. They're saying that they would expand off from that and do fiber to the home. And it was originally just along their fiber routes that they are supposed to do that with that bond and that agreement we made with them. They would expand that and do more areas.
Are any towers being built yet?
I heard
Cat-
blinking on a couple of them. There's one that were already
Catawba is up and running on Pass Road, but that's
I think Winter has obviously stopped. They have not drawn any dollars. They have not signed off on anything. They haven't bought any materials. They haven't. So I think spring that's when they'll hit it hard here. I know they've reached out to several landowners and have things going with them. So I know there's some work being done in the background, just not putting stuff on the ground. We are meeting Monday. I was like at noon today, but Monday at noon, I'm meeting with Motorola and the sheriff's office. We talked about it quite a bit at law enforcement, and that is we're working with them to see what we want to put on the towers and where, how many towers that would be. And then what our hope is the project comes in at a price that we can use the funds that we're receiving from Bug Tussle for being the co-signer to offset that loan. So like this year we got $60,000 to pay or for being the loan person. So hopefully say the project's 600,000, we could do it over 10 years and our payment would be that 600 or 60,000 or less, whatever the terms would be. We would try to fit it in so it's a no cost to us or taxpayers because there's an offset. It would be an awesome offset. Don't quote me that we're going to be able to do it. We're hoping that there's some wiggle there. There's some room to do that. But going back to telcos, I did write a letter. They all received it saying the same thing. The couple points we hit after talking to the chair.
Okay, if there's nothing else, move on. Number 11, Information Technology Department, Cybersecurity Tabletop Exercise Review.
All I want to do is let you guys know we do these, and we had one. The IT department, myself, what they did is they sit you in a room with our it was Heartland, who was kind of our help with all our IT servers, and they go, "Here's a scenario. What would you do?" And then TJ and Melissa and myself have to go, "Okay, who would you contact? What would you do?" And a lot of it didn't have anything to do with me because it was like they put a zip drive and all of a sudden things start freezing. What do you do? And TJ and Melissa go, "Okay, we'd rip it out of the machine. We would take it off the wall. We'd shut this down. We'd shut this down. We'd go to our backup. We wouldn't get our backup touching that." Like all these different steps that they would go through, you know, who do we contact? When do we contact them? How? And it was, I can't remember if we were 2 hours. It was a really interesting exercise. I can tell you, TJ and Melissa and Heartland and the rest of whoever would be, we're all prepared. You don't know what it's going to be or what it's going to look like, but it will, we are prepared for a situation that would be a cyber issue. I hate using the attack because it's an issue. It happens and we'll deal with it. But we're going to do another one, I think in 6 months, where they come up with a different issue and we deal with it.
So you had a company come in here and test you, basically what
Yep.
you're saying.
Yep.
Did you get a passing grade?
They said TJ was well prepared.
right,
So
well, that's
everybody who
important.
knows TJ,
Yeah.
he went. We didn't even get through. We were supposed to do 3 exercises. We got through 1.5.
You get
'cause
some
TJ
ransomware here and get all tied up and it might cost
Yeah.
a lot of money.
TJ was very detailed. We worked on our strategic plan as we went through it, and he asked questions, and you know, it was interesting. It was way different than dealing with when the plane crashes or when the body's found on the side of the road. What's the plan when you all of a sudden 160 employees might not have access to the internet or to their files? What do you do? And how do you get access? How do you fix things?
As long as we're on the topic of exercise, I was looking at the vouchers. There was one for incident response exercise. Is that different? Was that emergency?
Emergency management.
Okay, we'll talk
Was it
about
the
that later.
dams
then.
one? I think she had a,
Well, we could talk about that when we get to
yeah,
vouchers.
yeah.
Just put a question of price, but we'll talk about it then. Anything else regarding IT? Okay, we'll move on to number 12, Catkins, 2025-2030 contract update.
They were a tough group to work with. No, they were great. So we finalized the contract in December of 2024. You guys were aware of what the general premise of the contract was. We're Sheriff's Department, where both parties are excited to work with each other going forward. The contract is a 5-year contract, so it runs from 2025 to 2030. And the one issue that we brought up that after 2030, we had an evergreen clause in there, meaning it always renews unless one of the parties comes forward. I think within it was a long runway, right? They couldn't just give us 30 days and be like, haha, we got you, we're gonna kick you out. I can't remember the exact days, but it's a long runway. If no one negotiates, it's only 2%. So for the first 5 years, we're going up 4%. Once we get to that 5th year, it just goes down to the 2% unless one or the other party says we need to talk about it. And that number needs to be talked at least 365 days prior to the end of a contract. So it automatically renews at the 2% in 2030, but in order to change that for 2031, they have to talk to us before 1 year prior to that new date happening. I think it's just, this will work out well. We reduced that. Originally that was 4%. I know we had a lot of discussion where it's like, whoa, this is always going to be high. I went back to them. We worked it out. They were happy with 2 unless we need to talk about it. So that's where we ended.
Anybody got any questions regarding the Keckins contract?
$10,000 a month, so 120.
Anything else? Okay, thanks. Moving on, number 13, creation of local legislative breakfast, brunch, lunch.
So this is something I talked to Brian about. I think one thing that Price County doesn't do very well as a whole is connect with their legislators and the needs or we talked about the per mile cost for highway. Well, I think some legislators understand that, look, we're a rural area. We only have so many people. We have a lot of mileage. How do we get funding? How do we work through this? The yellow equipment, per capita, that's a really expensive piece of equipment compared to, a county with 400,000 people buying a grader. They have the same amount of roads or less that they're dealing with, but per person, it's expensive to deal with. So what I'm requesting is that we work with our department heads, the county board members, to engage the legislators. We would create a lunch, brunch, breakfast, whatever it might be. We pick a local establishment, invite these individuals and do presentations, whether it's zoning because there's a shoreland issue, right? Talk about what we need for that. If it's the clerk of courts, if it's mental health, we can have Chana do a presentation or Sarah do a presentation. Give them 5-10 minutes to talk about, here's our expenses. This is a mandated service. Remind them of our story. So when they go down and hopefully fight for what we need, they have those stories to talk about. And then from there, also give them their 5 minutes in the sun. So they come up, they can say, oh, I'm working on the wolf thing, or I'm working on mental health. Jesse James did he come to our meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember Towns Association here. Jesse James talking
Oh,
about.
maybe it was Town Association.
Mhm.
You're
Oh,
right.
okay. Jesse James came and talked to people and said, my highlight for 2025 is mental health and getting the costs in control up here. So this would get us in front of those legislators, give them a voice, give us a voice. I'm recommending we do it 3 times a year. And then I would have Laura work on that project to organize it, confirm dates, confirm with legislators, figure out what topics. I would help her with topics, but get the department heads ready to do those presentations. This works really well in other counties.
Well,
Mr. Markstrom?
I think that's a marvelous idea, but I would include also state, you're saying?
Yep, state,
But also
federal.
Federal.
Yep, we have them on the list. Tom Tiffany,
Okay.
Ron Johnson, Baldwin. We had a whole list of, yep,
Right.
state, federal,
It's a marvelous
local.
idea.
Yeah. So Jesse James.
Because we're really,
Rob
in
Simmons.
our neighborhood, and our representatives, we're really an outlier.
Yeah, I meet with a lot of these people twice a year, 3 times, well, more than that, 3-4 times a year. So like end of February, I meet with all of them in Madison. I was supposed to do it this month. I stayed and helped with some meetings.
Would that be a public meeting, have to be posted?
No. So the other counties I worked with, this is not a public meeting and you're not discussing county business. You're letting legislators know what's going on in your county. So you're not making decisions. You're not doing it. So this would be invite only. So it's not, it's not a town hall meeting. This is we're here to work with our legislators and let them know what our departments need. We did talk about, do we invite like the mayors? Because we are smaller, where the other counties I talked to, most of them don't bring in the cities. That's their towns and cities can do their own thing. That for them, it's a county thing. They want to be upfront. They don't want to lose time with the legislators discussing town and city issues. We're a little smaller, might be worth inviting a few extra people. So
I'm on board with it. I guess we're looking for a blessing here so they can continue working on setting something up. Let's go ahead and do that. Hallstrand motions. Barkstrom second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay. 14, Bay Area Rural Transit Update.
Okay. Yeah.
Veterans Ride Free Program and 2024 rider numbers.
Okay, the next thing, so the Bay Area Rural Transit, the only reason I want to bring this up is technically Veteran Service reports to this committee. In May 2024, they created, Bay Area Rail Transit created a program where veterans ride for free. I was at the December, well, it was the January meeting, or no, it must have been the December meeting paperwork. They did distribute how the rider numbers were. So it's not, you have it's in your packet, not all of December's was there. But we in Price County, our vets utilize the service at a much higher rate than anywhere else, which is great. Tony is a big part of that. So making sure we transition to having that vet service officer know about programs like this and let their vets know. But Route 1 and 2, I believe, is like between Bayfield and Ashland area. They had 23 free rides in six and a half months. BG would be Bayfield area, and they had 5 rides. The city of Ashland did 258 rides in 6 months. Mellon did 1 ride, and Price County did 652 free rides for veterans. So it's been a great program. We did support, so it's a free ride program. Because Tony had some ARPA funding that he had to distribute by the end of last year, I worked with him and we distributed $2,500 towards the program just to give them more local matching share. We didn't have to, but we had the ARPA funds to do it. They did vote to continue this program through 2025. And so hopefully all riders numbers go up, but I do believe Price County will continue to do well with this program.
The other thing with this, if they use this program, then they're not using the volunteer driver program,
Which
that
is a
it's
huge
very hard to
savings.
get the volunteer drivers to be able
Yeah.
to do this.
Especially for the free vet rides. We have a very, very strong ridership total numbers. If you look at the Bay Area Transit, we are one of the most used areas. Now we're a little bigger than, the Ashland itself, but it's still 2 cities. We beat Ashland with our numbers. We have good ridership, well utilized program. What we see, like winter was a great example, is the individuals want to get out and go meet their friends or go to the grocery store, don't want to rely on a family member, but don't feel comfortable driving when it's snowy out. And so they park their cars, and for the couple bucks that they pay to get to the restaurant by their friends or get to the grocery store or medical provider, library, it's well worth it for these individuals, these geezers. I'm quoting you, Larry. And it's all ages. It's not an old senior bus. It's lots of young youth use it in the summer to get to their swim lessons. We see that in Park Falls a ton.
And a side note to that regarding veterans usage, another accolade to Tony and
Yeah.
another, I guess, example of he's going to be a hard guy to replace.
Does well.
Anything else regarding Bart? If not, we'll move on to vouchers. Looking for a motion to approve vouchers. Mr. Polachek,
I'll second.
second by Erickson. Any discussion? Well, I have a couple questions. Social media archiving, $4,188 a month, it looks like. What are we,
That's not a
Doing with
month.
that.
That should be for the
That's-
year.
yeah.
For the
That's how
year.
okay, maybe because it was in there on 2 different ones. It's
Did you get a vendor name?
Archival Social Incorporated. It's the same amount both times.
Yeah, it's our public records. I know that we.
It's not just social media, it's public electronic records, period.
Yep, all our online.
Okay, when I hear social media, I think Facebook. I don't
It's
know
a
why.
lot of Facebook. It's our web page. Yeah.
So are we paying for that YouTube webpage where we Cast our meetings?
Nope, nope, no, because we back that up separately. But and for open records, we have to have that for the social media.
We can't do that in-house.
Mm,
I mean, about Beacon Maps, that's
That's our.
payment for,
reg-
is that annual or monthly, that $4,176?
Looking right now. Up to 12 accounts.
That'd be a
Looks like it's
Sylvia
up-
question. I think that's annual
Oh, it's
because
a prepaid. I think this is.
it's the Fiddler stuff and the Beacon. So what Beacon is our online maps record keeping, where you get access to it. So
This is an IT.
Beacon?
Well, no, Archive Social.
Oh yeah, he asked about Beacon.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, two different
That's-
things.
That is, yes.
Yes, registered dudes.
Um, Just. I don't know why. I don't see why it's going where it's going. Yeah, it is, it's 12 accounts and up to 1.6K records per month.
So we gotta pay over $4,000 for a month?
I know,
We'll
I gotta
look into that. That doesn't sound-
Cause I gotta see why it's being posted where it's being posted.
Yeah.
to, so.
It's not $40,000 a year.
No, 4,000, oh yeah, per year. it would be
48,000. That I
Be
know it's
almost
not that. I
50.
know it's not cheap that we have to archive the stuff, but that seems high.
Yeah,
But we'll have TJ look at it, or we'll look at
What
it.
about Beacons? Is that monthly too, the 4,000?
sorry, it is annual.
There you go, 4,100.
It is annual, cause I'm just looking at.
For what?
multiple-
The
For
social
first
media?
Social
Yeah, yeah,
media.
that's annual.
So we paid last year's in December and this year's in January? Cause I saw two different ones.
I'll have to see, cause I'm not seeing two different ones. I see one as 1/4 of 2025 and 1/4 of 2024.
Well, one might have been December.
It might have been period 13 and moved.
Oh, it could have been.
Well, we'll look.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't see two.
And then who pays for the CDL school? 4,230. I mean, we're paying for it, but is it going to executive or highway?
Highway.
So that goes on their budget. Okay, that answers that question. I think we're getting a good deal for that because it would cost that much about 15 years ago when I went. Just chat GPT, that's only $20, but are we paying for somebody's
One
subscription
person,
to an
yeah.
app?
One.
person.
Not the app, but we pay for one premium service, yeah, to use it.
Okay, workman's comp, I'm just making a comment. I know we can't do anything about it, but we're spending a lot of money on workman's comp, over 150,000.
And we have a very good workers'
We
comp
do, okay.
rating. We're like one of the lowest in the state for our, it's called we're like at 0.87. So
Yeah.
what they do, this is good. So what they do is they rate every position throughout the state at a public level and say, okay, for every dollar you spend on a deputy, it's this much money for every, so then we would know our base amount would be, say, 180,000. And then they give you a rating. And so if you're above a 1, you pay more. If you're below a 1, it's like the percentage. So we're for a while we were at like 0.78. We're up to like 0.81, 82. So then you get a discount. So out of that 150, you multiply it by 0.8 whatever, and that's what we pay. Where I've seen like horror stories where it's like, oh, we're a 1.26 rating because you're really bad. So you get your base plus the 26%.
So that's a good reflection on
Yeah.
our
Yep,
employees
we-
and our
yeah.
supervision.
Safety,
Yeah,
our
we get a 15%
rebate also,
on it.
yeah.
We get any back at the end of the year?
Yep,
That's
15%. Yeah, if you don't hit certain numbers, and
Correct.
we've done well.
Yeah.
Not gonna work.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion regarding vouchers? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Vouchers are approved. Date of next meeting is the last agenda item. Next one is March 13th. If we need to have it, which we will, looking forward,
Yes.
I think we're gonna have to have one for sure then, and then after that, April 10th. There's no other discussion. Call this meeting adjourned.